Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the story of medieval beauty standards. Forget the dazzling princess gowns of Disney movies. Forget the flawless, glowing skin and sparkling tiaras from your favorite fairy tales. Because in this world, being too beautiful or too ugly could cost you everything. Why is it like that? Before we uncover the twisted truth, mash that like button if you're ready for some raw medieval vibes, subscribe for more gritty tales, and drop a comment with your city and the time. I'm stoked to see where this story scampers. Now, stoke the fire, dim the lights, and it's time to go. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1375 in a cramped wooden chamber above a cloth dyer's workshop in northern France. Good news? You're alive. You're not a lowly peasant trudging through filth, nor are you a noble burdened by court intrigue. You're something in between, perhaps the daughter of a merchant or the ward of a middling nobleman. The bad news? You're a young woman, and in this world your worth is painted across your skin, carved into your forehead, braided into your hair, and reeked in your perfume. The air in your room is thick with candle wax, wood smoke, and something vaguely sour. You sit before a bronze mirror, a small clay jar clutched in your trembling hands. Inside, white lead paste, brewed from vinegar and metal. You know it's poison, everyone does, but beauty demands sacrifice. You smear it across your cheeks, watching as your complexion fades into the ghostly white hue of nobility. It prickles, it burns, but you hold still. A single hint of tan might label you a labourer. But the ritual doesn't stop there. You heat the tip of a knife and carefully burn off your eyebrows, watching your forehead stretch higher, holy and bare. You pluck your hairline backward with quicklime, arsenic, even cat dung dissolved in vinegar. Your scalp stings, your head swims, but your forehead gleams, an aristocratic billboard of virtue. You've heard the stories whispered by servants, noble women bleeding from their gums, collapsing in fainting rooms, their hair falling out in silent handfuls. But still, they press the paste to their skin and slice away their brows, because in a world where ugliness is suspicion and beauty is proof of worth, even pain becomes a prayer. And so do you. For an extra touch of radiance, you mix crushed pearls, ground to a fine dust by an apothecary's mortar, with egg whites, stirring them into a sticky paste that smells faintly of the hen house. You slather it across your face, wincing as it dries into a cracked, omelette-like crust, tightening your skin until it feels like parchment stretched over a drum. The result is a complexion that could rival the moon on a winter's night, luminous and otherworldly, drawing gasps from suitors and envious glares from rivals. Some of your bolder friends take it further, pressing vinegar-soaked cloths to their faces until their skin reddens and peels, each application a stinging ritual to bleach away any hint of colour. Others, in a display of audacity that makes you shudder, allow leeches to cling to their cheeks, their tiny mouths draining just enough blood to create that nobly faint look, as if they've just emerged from a fainting spell or a private audience with a saint. You pass on the leeches, their slimy wriggling is too much even for your ambition, but you do borrow a trick from the court, painting delicate blue veins onto your wrists and chest with azure pigment. The effect is subtle yet striking, a nod to the fragility that screams high status, as if your veins are too noble to hide beneath common flesh. As you catch your reflection, you look one breeze away from collapsing, a vision of refinement that makes knights bow and priests nod approvingly. Yet, as the lead's sting lingers and the mirror reflects your ghostly pallor, you can't help but wonder if this beauty, so fiercely sought, is a blessing or a curse, a fleeting triumph in a world where every glance comes with judgment. Now, let's talk about your forehead, or rather, the vast gleaming expanse you're about to create. In this era, a high forehead is the crown jewel of beauty, a sign of intelligence, virtue, and a life spent pondering psalms rather than planting barley. To achieve this, you grab a pair of heated tweezers and start plucking your eyebrows into oblivion, wincing as each hair is yanked from its root. But you don't stop there. You push your hairline back, inch by painful inch, using a mixture of quicklime, arsenic, and yes, cat dung dissolved in vinegar. The stench is unholy, and the burn on your scalp is worse, but the result is a forehead so expansive it could host a small tournament. Some women in your town mark their new hairline with kitchen ash first, ensuring symmetry before the plucking begins. You try it, dusting ash across your brow and checking your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. The effect is striking. Your face now begins somewhere near the top of your head, framed by a wimple that pulls everything taut. Without eyebrows, your eyes seem larger, your expression serene, as if you'd just seen an angel and forgotten how to blink. It's not comfortable, your scalp stings for days, but when a passing knight bows a little lower, you know it's worth it. Your cheeks need a touch of colour, but this is a delicate dance. A subtle blush suggests youth and vitality, like you've just sighed over a love sonnet, but too much, and you risk whispers of vanity, or worse, witchcraft. You crush beetroot and mulberries, mixing their juice with a pinch of cochineal, that vivid red dye made from ground-up insects. With a trembling finger, you dab the mixture onto your cheeks, blending carefully to avoid detection. The church looms large, and any hint of overt makeup could land you in a sermon about sin. Some women, you know, pinch their cheeks raw before stepping out, coaxing a natural flush without risking divine judgment. Others, bolder still, use diluted animal blood for a lively glow, though you stick to berries, unwilling to smell like a butcher's stall. The goal is a faint rose hue, just enough to suggest you're alive, but not so much that anyone thinks you're trying. If a nosy neighbour comments on your glow, you murmur something about a brisk walk and change the subject. Your hair is your next battlefield, a canvas where beauty and status wage their silent war. Blonde is the holy grail, a shimmering echo of the Virgin Mary's radiant locks immortalized in every cathedral painting, her golden halo glowing in stained glass. Your natural brown, rich as the earth but deemed too common, simply won't do. You've heard whispers of women in distant courts achieving that divine hue with exotic dyes from the east. Saffron, crushed indigo, or even powdered gold dust for the truly extravagant. But here, in your modest corner of the world, you turn to an old recipe passed down by your mother's maid, a pungent blend of saffron, honey, and, though you grimace at the thought, urine from a young servant. It's ammonia said to coax out the sunlit strands. You slather the sticky, acrid concoction onto your hair, the smell stinging your eyes as you sit beneath the unrelenting sun for hours. The heat is oppressive, your scalp prickling and blistering. But slowly, miraculously, your hair begins to take on a golden sheen, catching the light like a halo of your own. You rinse it carefully, praying the colour holds, and comb it out with a bone comb, each stroke a small victory. At court, hair is more than vanity, it's a currency of power. Some women swear by stranger remedies still. Wine-soaked nail clippings, steeped for days and rubbed into the scalp, supposedly strengthen the roots with their keratin, promising locks that grow thick and lustrous. Others claim that a paste of ground walnut shells and rosewater prevents hair from falling out, though it leaves a gritty residue that takes days to wash away. You've heard of a countess who bathes her hair in mare's milk, insisting it adds a silken sheen, but you lack the means for such extravagance. Instead, you stick to your saffron brew and braid your hair loosely, letting it cascade down your back in soft, undulating waves, a privilege reserved for the unmarried. The sight of it, flowing freely, is a quiet rebellion against the future that awaits. Once you wed, your hair will vanish under a coif or wimple, locked away like a treasure too precious for the world's eyes. For now, you savour the freedom, weaving silk ribbons into your braids, crimson, sapphire and gold, their colours catching the light as you move through the bustling market. Suitors pause, their gazes lingering. Rivals narrow their eyes, their own ribbons suddenly seeming dull. Your hair for this fleeting moment is your triumph. But the spectre of marriage looms, and with it the end of your flowing locks. You're already dreading the day you'll trade your unbound tresses for the medieval equivalent of a modesty fortress. Married women bind their hair beneath coifs, tight linen caps that hug the skull like a second skin, leaving only the face exposed. Others wear wimples, draped under the chin and across the shoulders, a linen straitjacket that smothers any trace of individuality. The truly ambitious, or perhaps the truly burdened, don't the hennin, a towering cone-shaped hat that stretches 2 feet into the sky, its point piercing the heavens like a cathedral spire. A sheer veil, delicate as spider's silk, drapes from its peak, fluttering like a battle standard with every step. You've seen noble women in these, their heads wobbling under the weight, veils snagging on chandeliers or catching the wind in open courtyards, threatening to topple their wearers. Some weave gold thread into their hairnets, the metallic strands glinting like coins, while others pin tiny silver bells that jingle softly, a musical reminder of their wealth with every movement. Rumour swirls through the court of stranger customs still. A few French ladies, it's said, tuck love charms into their hennins, scraps of parchment inscribed with secret runes or herbs pressed into tiny pouches, meant to enchant a suitor's heart. Others, bolder still, hide animal bones within the hat's structure, believing the relics of a hare or fox might lend them cunning or allure. You've even heard of a duchess who sewed a lock of her lover's hair into her veil, a dangerous talisman kept close to her heart. Such practices make you uneasy, teetering too close to witchcraft for comfort. For now, you keep to a simple circlet, its polished silver resting lightly on your brow, framing your golden hair. It's modest but elegant, a quiet statement of your place in the world. Yet the pressure to upgrade looms as large as the hennins themselves, a constant reminder that beauty here is never just beauty. It's a game of rank, of favour, of survival. The market hums around you, and you catch your reflection in a merchant's polished bronze mirror. Your hair, kissed by the sun, and your strange alchemy, glows softly, the ribbons swaying as you turn your head. A young lord lingers nearby, his eyes tracing the curve of your braid, and you feel a flicker of pride. But pride is fleeting, and the weight of expectation presses heavier still. Soon, you'll face the choice, to keep your hair as a banner of youth, or to bind it away, trading freedom for duty. For now you walk on, the ribbons dancing, the golden sheen of your hair a fleeting crown in a world that demands you wear a heavier one. Your figure is next, and the goal is clear. You must look as fragile as a moonbeam. A slim, willowy frame with a narrow waist and delicate shoulders is the ideal, suggesting you've never lifted anything heavier than a prayer book. You wear a kirtle, its laces cinched tight to sculpt your waist, though breathing becomes a negotiation with your ribcage. Some women take it further, eating only rose water and honey, avoiding red meat to keep their skin pale and their bodies light. You hear whispers of noble women nibbling white clay to brighten their complexion, though the stomach aches and constipation make you question their wisdom. Your dress, with its high waistline, elongates your torso, making you seem taller and more ethereal, as if you might float away during Mass. The effect is perfect, until you faint at a banquet, earning praise for your refined delicacy while secretly cursing your laces. Your eyes are your secret weapon, large and soulful, with a hint of tears that suggest you've just finished praying or mourning a lost love. To enhance them, you dab a touch of charcoal around your lashes, risking a sting that could blind you. Some women use onion juice or smouldering ash to coax tears, creating that devoutly emotional look right before meeting a suitor. You try it once, choking on the fumes, but the effect is undeniable. Your eyes glisten like sacred pools. Direct eye contact is forbidden. It's too bold, too sinful, so you master the art of glancing downward, your lashes casting shadows that hint at purity without saying a word. Your breath is a constant battle, a silent skirmish fought daily in a world without toothpaste or minty balms. The lingering ghost of last night's garlic-heavy stew clings to your tongue, a stubborn reminder of the hearty meal shared around the fire. To combat it, you chew cloves and fennel seeds, their sharp, spicy bite flooding your mouth with warmth. The cloves are bitter, the fennel faintly sweet, but together they wrestle the garlic's pungence into submission. Or so you hope. You've seen merchants at the market hawk these spices as breath sweeteners, their stalls fragrant with promise. But the relief is fleeting. By mid-morning, you're chewing again, the seeds tucked into a small pouch at your belt for quick access. Some women at court swear by a more elaborate ritual. They scrub their teeth with a coarse cloth dipped in a paste of crushed sage leaves and powdered coral, the latter ground fine enough to avoid scratching their gums. You've tried it, the sage lending a faint herbal tang, the coral gritty against your teeth, but the effort yields no dazzling smile. In truth, no one shows their teeth anyway. Art and poetry alike favour closed lips, as if everyone's guarding a dental secret, hiding chipped enamel or blackened stubs behind demure expressions. The wealthy flaunt ivory combs and polished mirrors, but even they can't escape the era's dental reality. Some women, go further, chewing charcoal mixed with honey, a remedy whispered to draw out toxins from the gum. They swear it whitens their teeth, though you suspect it mostly leaves their mouths gritty, the black flecks lingering like unwelcome guests. You've tried it once, spitting furiously into a basin, and decided it wasn't worth the mess. Instead, you settled for a quick rinse with myrrh dissolved in water, its resinous, slightly bitter taste lingering as you pray it's enough to keep conversations pleasant. The myrrh is costly, a luxury bartered from a spice trader, but its faint perfume gives you confidence as you navigate the crowded market, nodding to suitors and sidestepping gossiping rivals. Scent, however, is your final frontier, a battlefield where you wage war against the world's relentless odors. Bathing is a rare luxury, reserved for high feast days or the occasional visit to a communal bathhouse, where the water is often tepid and shared among too many bodies. Most days you make do with a damp cloth and a basin, scrubbing your skin with rough soap made from lye and animal fat, its harshness leaving your hands raw but clean. To mask the town's pervasive smells, manure from the stables, smoke from countless hearths, the sour tang of unwashed bodies, you rely on a pomander, a small silver orb dangling from your belt. Inside, it's stuffed with rosemary and cloves, their sharp, clean scents wafting upward as you move through the streets. The pomander is both armour and talisman, warding off the stench of the tanner's yard and the fishmonger's stall. You've seen wealthier women with pomanders encrusted with tiny gems, their chains glinting in the sunlight, but yours is simple, its surface etched with a modest floral pattern. It's a small comfort, but a necessary one, in a world where odours define status as much as silk or gold. To further your defence, you tuck sprigs of lavender into your hair, their soft purple buds woven into your braids, releasing a gentle fragrance with every turn of your head. You've learned to be strategic, placing the lavender where it won't crush too quickly, though by evening the petals often wilt, leaving faint stains on your scalp. Herbal sachets, small linen pouches filled with dried mint and chamomile, are slipped into the folds of your dress, nestled against your skin to create an aura of freshness. You hope they make you smell like a garden in bloom, rather than the stable yard after a rain. The sachets are a trick you learned from your mother, who swore by their power to charm and disarm. Some noblewomen take it further, stuffing rose petals into their shoes, each step releasing a faint perfume that announces their refinement. You've tried it, crushing the delicate petals underfoot, imagining yourself trailing a cloud of elegance. But by noon, the petals turn to mush, leaving your shoes damp and your feet squelching uncomfortably through the day. You've since abandoned the practice, though you envy the noblewomen who seem to glide effortlessly, their scents lingering like a royal decree. The court is a theatre of fragrance, where every woman competes to outshine the others. You've heard of a baroness who bathes in rosewater, her skin imbued with its delicate sweetness, a luxury so extravagant it's whispered about in hushed tones. Others rub ambergris, that rare and costly substance from the sea, into their wrists, its musky warmth lingering for days. Such indulgences are beyond your reach, but you've learned to mimic them with what you have. A merchant once sold you a vial of distilled orange blossom, claiming it came from the orchards of Al-Andalus. You dab it sparingly behind your ears, its citrusy brightness cutting through the heavier scents of the town. The vial is nearly empty now, and you ration it like gold, knowing you may not afford another. Scent is more than vanity, it's strategy. A pleasant fragrance can soften a suitor's gaze, sway a merchant's price, or silence a rival's barb. You've seen how the air shifts when a well-scented lady enters a room, heads turning, conversations pausing, but the battle is never won. The town's odours are relentless, creeping into your clothes, your hair, your very skin. You've heard tales of women in far-off courts who burn myrrh and frankincense in their chambers, the smoke curling around them like a sacred veil. Here, you make do with a small clay burner, feeding it dried herbs when you can afford them, letting the faint smoke cleanse your modest room. It's not enough to banish the world's smells entirely, but it's a small rebellion against the chaos outside. As you move through the market, your pomander swings gently, the lavender in your hair mingling with the faint orange blossom on your skin. A young lord passes, his eyes lingering, and you catch a fleeting smile. Your breath, you hope, is cloaked in cloves and myrrh, your scent a carefully crafted armour. But the day wears on, and the heat of the sun, the press of the crowd, and the ever-present dust of the streets threaten to undo your efforts. You adjust the lavender in your hair, smooth your dress over the herbal sachets, and press forward. Hygiene in this world is no mere routine, it's a performance, a delicate dance of effort and illusion, where every choice, from the seeds you chew to the petals you crush, shapes how the world sees you. For now you hold the line, your breath and scent a fragile shield in a world that spares no one. For men, beauty is less punishing than it is for women, but no less calculated, a careful orchestration of appearance to signal status and divine favour. Your brother, an aspiring courtier with ambitions to rise in the king's favour, dedicates himself to this pursuit with the precision of a knight preparing for battle. His ideal is a tall, lean frame, broad-shouldered and lithe, a silhouette that speaks of noble blood rather than the stooped labour of a peasant. His complexion, carefully guarded from the sun's harsh kiss, must remain free of the ruddy tan that marks those who toil in fields or forges. To achieve this, he avoids the midday sun, lingering in shaded halls or beneath wide-brimmed hats, his skin kept pale as a sign of leisure and privilege. His curls, lightly waved, are a point of pride, painstakingly crafted by a patient servant wielding a heated iron rod. The process is tedious, the servant's hands trembling as he twists each lock to fall just so, cascading to your brother's shoulders in a manner that suggests both elegance and nonchalance. His fitted tunic, tailored to accentuate his noble posture, is cut from rich wool dyed in deep hues of sapphire and burgundy, its tight lacing emphasizing a straight spine and squared shoulders. Over it, he dons a feathered cap, its vibrant plumes nodding with each step, a beacon of his status. His pointed shoes, absurdly long and curled at the tips, could skewer a rat in a pinch, their impracticality a deliberate declaration that he is no labourer bound to muddy fields. You've heard whispers of other men at court, particularly the younger sons of nobles who take this further, curling their hair with irons or even bleaching it with lye to mimic the golden locks of mythic heroes. Such tasks are often delegated to squires, who grumble under their breath, their hands more accustomed to polishing armour than coaxing curls into submission. Your brother, though, takes pride in his appearance, seeing it as a ladder to climb the treacherous rungs of courtly favour. Beauty in this medieval world is far more than skin deep. It's a moral minefield, a delicate dance between divine blessing and damnable sin. To be beautiful is to be touched by God's favour, your features a testament to his craftsmanship, a living reflection of the celestial order. A clear complexion, symmetrical features or lustrous hair are seen as signs of inner virtue, proof that you are chosen, set apart from the common throng. Yet to know you're beautiful, to revel in your own reflection or linger too long before a polished bronze mirror is to flirt with the sin of vanity, a one-way ticket to a priest's stern sermon, or worse. The church looms large, its teachings a constant reminder that pride in one's appearance can tip into hubris, a fall from grace as swift as Lucifer's. For women the stakes are higher still. Your own beauty, carefully cultivated, is both a weapon and a vulnerability. You've heard chilling tales of stunning women accused of witchcraft, their radiant eyes or flawless skin branded as a devil's spell, their allure blamed for leading men astray. Some, it's whispered, have been dragged to the stake, their beauty twisted into evidence of sorcery, their lives snuffed out in flames for the crime of being too captivating. The memory of such stories makes you tread carefully, balancing virtue and appearance with the precision of a tightrope walker. One wrong step, a smile too bold, a glance too lingering, could mark you as prideful, or worse, a temptress weaving snares for men's souls. Yet you persist, driven by the unspoken rules of the court, where beauty is not just a personal triumph but a social necessity, a currency that buys favour, alliances and survival. Your own routine is a daily ritual of transformation, a battle fought with tools both strange and punishing. You pluck stray hairs from your brow with a pair of iron tweezers, wincing at each sharp tug, aiming for the high-arched forehead that signals refinement. You paint your cheeks with a paste of crushed berries and lead powder, the latter a dangerous indulgence that leaves your skin ghostly pale but faintly luminous, a look prized by noble women. The lead stings faintly, and you've heard rumours of women whose faces have sickened from its use, their beauty fading into pallor and pain. But the pressure to conform is relentless. Some women, go further, applying leeches to their temples to draw out bad humours, believing the bloodletting will brighten their eyes or smooth their skin. You've avoided this, wary of the slimy creatures and the dizziness they bring. But you've seen the marks they leave on others, tiny, angry red dots that linger for days. Instead, you lace yourself into a corset of whalebone and linen, its rigid embrace forcing your waist into the coveted hourglass shape, though each breath feels like a negotiation. Your gowns, heavy with embroidery, are chosen not just for beauty but for their ability to signal wealth and lineage. Their trailing sleeves and intricate patterns a silent boast of your family's standing. The men, too, face their own pressures, though their path is less fraught with moral peril. Your brother's peers at court compete in displays of masculine elegance, their doublets padded to exaggerate their shoulders, their hose so tight they seem painted on. Some, the boldest, dust their faces with flour to achieve the same pale complexion you strive for, though they laugh it off as a jest. Others grow their beards long and oiled, shaping them into points or braiding them with silk threads, a nod to the warriors of old but softened by courtly refinement. You've seen knights, fresh from the lists, trade their armour for velvet cloaks, their hair slicked with rose-scented pomade, their fingers heavy with rings that catch the candlelight. Beauty, for them, is a performance of power, a way to stand out in a hall crowded with ambition. Yet for all its rewards, the pursuit of beauty is exhausting, a relentless campaign that demands vigilance. You wake each dawn to the same rituals, knowing that a single misstep, a blemish left uncovered, a lock of hair out of place, could invite whispers or worse. The court is a stage, and every glance, every gesture is scrutinized. You've learned to move with care, your steps measured, your smile restrained, lest you draw the wrong kind of attention. The church's warnings echo in your mind, but so does the world's demand to shine, to be seen as a vessel of grace and worth. You persist, plucking, painting, and lacing yourself into the ideal, because in this medieval world beauty isn't just a goal, it's a battlefield, fought with lead, leeches, and a stubborn will to rise above the ordinary. As you pass through the market, your brother at your side, his feathers bobbing and your gown trailing, you feel the weight of every eye upon you. Beauty is your armour, your weapon, your burden, and you carry it with the grace of someone who knows its cost. The Persian Immortals. The Persian Immortals were far more than an elite fighting force within the Achaemenid Empire. They were a profound embodiment of imperial power, discipline, and enduring presence. Emerging during the empire's formative years under Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE, they were conceived as Persia transitioned from a regional power to a colossal empire spanning continents. Cyrus, a visionary leader, understood that an empire's strength lay not only in its administrators, tax collectors, or provincial governors, but in a meticulously crafted military unit capable of projecting dominance, inspiring unwavering loyalty, and suppressing rebellion with unparalleled precision. Thus, the Immortals were born, a symbol of Persia's unyielding might, designed to strike awe and fear into allies and enemies alike. The name Immortals was not a mere flourish of royal propaganda. It was a stroke of logistical and psychological genius. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, the Immortals' ranks were perpetually maintained at exactly 10,000 men. The moment a soldier fell, whether to battle, illness, or injury, a replacement stepped into his place with seamless efficiency, ensuring the number never wavered. To those outside the empire, this created an illusion of invincibility, a force that could not be diminished, weakened, or destroyed. Whether this was achieved through clever myth-making or rigorous administrative precision, the effect was undeniable. The Immortals' name endured, not because of individual heroics, but because they represented the eternal, unbreakable will of the Persian Empire. Their immortality was not about the survival of any single man, but about the perpetuation of an idea, a force that seemed to defy time itself. These were no ordinary soldiers. The Immortals were carefully selected from the Persian nobility or from families of high standing whose loyalty to the king was beyond question. Their training began in childhood, a grueling process that forged not only warriors but exemplars of Achaemenid ideals, order, obedience, and composure under the most intense pressure. They were clad in finely crafted robes, their scale armour glinting beneath, armed with short spears, bows, short swords, and lightweight wicker shields. Every aspect of their appearance was deliberate, calculated to project both elegance and lethality. The Persian kings did not merely send soldiers into battle, they deployed a mobile political statement, wrapped in silk and reinforced with steel, a visual testament to the empire's grandeur and invincibility. From the fertile plains of Lydia to the arid deserts of Egypt, the Immortals were a constant presence as the Achaemenid Empire expanded its reach. They stood as silent sentinels behind kings, flanked royal thrones, and led the charge on battlefields across the known world. To encounter the Immortals was to witness the unrelenting pulse of the empire itself. They did not waver, did not retreat, and did not falter. Their endurance was their most terrifying quality, a relentless force that seemed to embody the empire's eternal will. Their appearance was a masterclass in psychological warfare, designed to unsettle and intimidate. Unlike the Greek hoplites, who were encased in heavy bronze armor, the Immortals moved like a tide of richly adorned shadows, their presence both regal and otherworldly. Their tunics and trousers, embroidered with intricate patterns and dyed in vibrant reds and purples, colours reserved for nobility, concealed flexible scale armour of bronze or iron, offering both mobility and protection. Their wicker shields, deceptively light, could deflect arrows and absorb blows with surprising resilience. Most distinctive was their soft felt tiara, a headdress that could be pulled over the face to obscure their identity, emphasizing their collective unity over individual glory. In contrast to the Greeks, who celebrated personal valor through customized armor, the Immortals thrived on uniformity. 10,000 men, moving in near-silent synchrony, created a visual and auditory spectacle that overwhelmed the senses, a living curtain of disciplined destruction descending upon the battlefield. Each Immortal was equipped with a short spear, a bow with a quiver of arrows, and a short sword or dagger secured at the belt. Their training prioritized agility, endurance, and adaptability over brute strength, enabling them to traverse vast distances without breaking formation. They were equally adept in open warfare as they were in the ceremonial halls of royal courts, their lightweight yet lethal equipment allowing for swift deployment and devastating impact. Their strength lay not in overwhelming force, but in relentless consistency, never faltering, never appearing vulnerable. This, combined with the enigmatic aura of their appearance, cemented their legend as a force to be feared. In battle, the Immortals moved with eerie precision. As drums thundered and dust rose in their wake, their expressions remained stoically composed. No shouts, no boasts, only the silent rhythm of synchronized movement. They were not men but a machine, forged not of flesh but of discipline, ritual and fear. To face the Immortals was to confront not just death, but an unshakable concept, a force that endured without pause, without mercy, and without end. Welcome, dear travellers, to the strange, perilous, and utterly mesmerizing world of medieval beauty, a realm where looking like you'd just drifted out of a crypt or being kissed by an angel was the ultimate badge of honor. This isn't your modern glow-up tutorial with soothing serums, LED masks, or TikTok-approved jade rollers. No, this is a saga of sacrifice, toxic brews, and an unrelenting quest to appear as though you'd never so much as glanced at a plough, a pitchfork, or anything resembling honest labour. Picture a world where beauty wasn't just skin-deep. It was a moral, social, and sometimes deadly battlefield. So, settle into your coziest chair, light a candle for that flickering medieval ambience, maybe pour a goblet of wine, or honey water if you're feeling authentic, and let's embark on this wild journey together. Before we dive in, do me a favour, hit that like button, subscribe if you're into this kind of historical madness, and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from across the globe, whether you're sipping tea in London at dawn or burning the midnight oil in Tokyo. In the medieval world, pale skin wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a glowing, ghostly proclamation of your place in the social hierarchy. A complexion so translucent it seemed to hum with moonlight wasn't just beautiful, it was a flex, a silent declaration that you were far too wealthy to toil under the sun's harsh glare. Tan skin? That was the mark of peasants, those who wrestled with muddy fields, stubborn livestock, and the daily grind of survival. To be pale was to be noble, as if your veins were too aristocratic to carry the faintest hint of colour. Across Europe, from the misty castles of England to the sun-drenched courts of Italy, this obsession with pallor united the elite in a shared dream of looking like they'd never stepped outside a stone-walled hall. But nature, as it often does, had other plans. Most people weren't born with skin that looked like it had been sculpted from alabaster, so they turned to a grim arsenal of tools to cheat biology. Enter white lead powder, the medieval equivalent of a high-stakes Instagram filter. This toxic paste, slathered across faces, necks and even shoulders, gave the skin a smooth, corpse-chic glow that screamed, "I'm above manual labour." The catch? It was a slow poison, seeping into the bloodstream, corroding organs and leaving a trail of ailments in its wake: hair loss, skin ulcers, chronic fatigue, and, for the truly dedicated, an early grave. Yet the nobility persisted, because beauty was worth dying for, apparently. For those wary of lead's lethal embrace, there were other options, each more bizarre than the last. Vinegar-soaked cloths were pressed against the skin to bleach it, stinging the flesh and leaving a faint acidic tang in the air. Mixtures of crushed pearls, egg whites and ground animal bones, sometimes ox, sometimes fish, were blended into pastes that promised a luminous complexion, but often left the face smelling like a medieval pantry gone wrong. These concoctions were applied with trembling hands as women stood before polished bronze mirrors or trusted maids to ensure an even coat. The goal was a face so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light of a castle's torchlit halls, a face that whispered of wealth and fragility. But pallor alone wasn't enough. To truly embody the noble ideal, some went further, painting delicate blue veins on their arms, chests or temples with plant-based dyes or crushed indigo. This wasn't just aesthetics, it was theatre, a way to mimic the translucent frailty of someone who'd never lifted anything heavier than a prayer book. The effect was striking, a woman gliding through a banquet hall, her skin so thin it seemed her veins might burst under the weight of a single glance. And here's where things get wonderfully weird. Some noble women, in their pursuit of that elegantly anemic look, turned to leeches. Yes, they'd let these slimy little creatures latch onto their cheeks or necks, draining just enough blood to leave them looking faintly ethereal, as if they'd just survived a polite encounter with a ghost. The faint pinpricks left behind were badges of honour, proof of their dedication to a beauty standard that danced on the edge of danger. If pale skin was the canvas, the forehead was the masterpiece. In the Middle Ages, a high, smooth, uninterrupted forehead wasn't just fashionable, it was a monument to intelligence, virtue and divine favour. A broad brow said, "I spend my days reading psalms and gazing pensively from castle windows," not, "I know how to churn butter or shear a sheep." To achieve this architectural marvel, women waged war on their eyebrows and hairlines, plucking and shaving with a fervour that bordered on religious. Eyebrows were plucked into near non-existence, leaving the face bare and serene, while the hairline was pushed back, sometimes inch by painful inch, to create a forehead so vast it could double as a medieval billboard. The tools were as brutal as the process. Hot iron tweezers, their tips glowing faintly from the fire, yanked out hairs with a sizzle. Pumice stones, rough as a blacksmith's hands, were scraped across the scalp to remove stubborn strands. And, for the truly committed, depilatory pastes made from quicklime, arsenic and, brace yourself, cat dung mixed with vinegar was slathered on, burning away hair and often leaving the skin red, blistered or peeling. The stench was unholy, but the result was divine, a forehead that seemed to stretch toward the heavens. Some women, in a stroke of medieval ingenuity, marked their desired hairline with kitchen ash or charcoal, ensuring symmetry before the shaving began. The process was agony, often drawing blood or leaving the skin raw, but the payoff was worth it. Portraits from the era show women with serene, almost alien expressions, their foreheads gleaming like polished marble under candlelight. Combined with pale skin and soft, delicate features, this high-domed aesthetic became shorthand for refined beauty, a face that began somewhere near the crown of the head and spoke of a life unburdened by toil. Artists and poets fueled the obsession, praising women whose brows seemed to carry the weight of divine contemplation. It was a look that said, "I am ethereal, untouchable, and probably plotting a chess move against God himself." A rosy flush on the cheeks was essential, youthful, fertile, alive, but it came with a catch. You couldn't look like you were trying. Too much colour and you were treading dangerously close to vanity, a sin that could land you in hot water with the church, or worse, the local witch hunter. Women turned to nature's palette for their blush. Beetroot juice, crushed strawberries or mulberries were dabbed on with trembling fingers, creating a soft glow that suggested you'd just overheard a mildly scandalous sonnet. For the wealthy, cochineal, a deep red pigment ground from dried insects, was a favourite, because nothing said beauty like crushing bugs for your face. Cinnabar, a mercury-based powder, was another elite choice, its vibrant hue masking its toxicity. One wrong move and your rosy cheeks could cost you your liver. Discretion was paramount. If your blush was too obvious, you risked being mistaken for a courtesan, or, gasp, a French courtier, both of which carried the kind of social stigma that could ruin a banquet. Some women skipped the makeup entirely, pinching their cheeks until they burned red, hoping to mimic that "just blushed" from a poem fluff. And for the truly audacious, a few smeared diluted animal blood, pig or lamb preferably, onto their cheeks for a vibrant living hue, because medieval beauty was nothing if not visceral. Blonde hair was the medieval equivalent of a halo, a shimmering crown tied to youth, virtue and the sanctity of the Virgin Mary herself. Never mind that most Europeans weren't born with golden locks, that's where creativity and a stomach for the grotesque came in. Women concocted hair-lightening brews from saffron, chamomile, ash, honey and, yes, urine, preferably from young boys, believed to be purer and more potent. These mixtures were slathered onto the hair, which was then baked under the sun for hours, the scalp stinging and the air thick with a pungent, acrid smell. The result was a celestial shimmer, a cascade of gold that caught the light like a divine promise. But the process was grueling. Scalps blistered, hair sometimes fell out in clumps, and the occasional bald patch was a badge of beauty's cost. The ideal hair was long, softly wavy, and free-flowing, but only for unmarried women. Once you wed, that glorious mane was banished under veils, nets and coifs, as if marriage turned your hair into a state secret. And here's a delightfully bizarre tidbit. Some women swore by soaking their locks in wine infused with human fingernails, believing it made their hair grow stronger, as if the essence of clipped nails held some mystical power. Medieval beauty was nothing if not a labyrinth of strange convictions. For married women, hair became a hidden treasure, locked away under layers of fabric that screamed modesty and propriety. Coifs, tight-fitting caps, hugged the scalp, while wimples wrapped under the chin, transforming the wearer into a pious linen-clad sandwich. But the real showstopper was the hennin, those towering cone-shaped hats that rose 2 to 3 feet high, a walking monument to status and ambition. Made of silk, velvet or brocade, hennins were structured with wire frames and draped with sheer veils that fluttered like gossamer wings until they inevitably snagged on a candelabra or a passing knight's sword. Some women wove golden threads or tiny bells into their hairnets, so they jingled like festive livestock on their way to church, each step a delicate chime of elegance. And in a distinctly French flourish, some tucked love charms, bits of bone, herbs or even a rabbit's foot into their hennins, believing it would spark romance or ward off rivals. Because nothing said "marry me" like a talisman hidden in your headwear, jangling softly as you curtsied. The ideal medieval body was a fragile wisp, a silhouette so delicate it seemed one gust of wind could carry it away. Broad shoulders and muscle tone were for peasants. Nobility chased a slender, almost ethereal frame, with narrow shoulders and a waist so tiny it suggested you lived on air and poetry. Dresses were cinched just below the bust, with kirtles and surcoats, early precursors to the corset, sculpting the torso into an elongated, fragile line. These garments were laced so tightly that breathing became an act of willpower, and fainting at a banquet was less a medical emergency than a badge of refined fragility. Diets were equally absurd, designed to preserve that ghostly pallor. Rose petals steeped in water, sips of honeyed wine, and a strict ban on red meat, which was thought to darken the complexion. Some nobles took it further, eating white clay, kaolin, to brighten their skin from within, believing it would purge impurities. The reality was less glamorous: stomach cramps, constipation, and a vague sense of regret. But at least you looked poetic while doubled over in pain. Beauty wasn't just a goal. It was a lifestyle of calculated suffering. Eyes were the medieval equivalent of a soul-bearing sonnet, large and luminous, with a hint of tears that suggested you'd been praying or pining for a lost love. The ideal gaze was soft, almost mournful, as if you'd personally witnessed the fall of Eden and were still recovering. To achieve this, women exposed their eyes to smoke, ash, or the stinging vapours of onions, risking irritation or even blindness for that just wept glow. Some went further, soaking cloths in digestive juices, yes, stomach acid, and holding them near their eyes to induce tears, because nothing said, "I'm sensitive," like self-inflicted chemical burns. Direct eye contact was a delicate dance. Too much and you were bold, flirtatious, or suspiciously French. Too little and you seemed shifty or possibly possessed. The trick was a fleeting glance from beneath lowered lids, a look that whispered virtue without shouting it. In Northern Europe, blue or grey eyes were idealized, tied to innocence and purity, while in the South, darker eyes held their own allure, especially when paired with a noble dowry. Teeth and breath were the dark corners of medieval beauty, where even the most dedicated faltered. Toothbrushes were centuries away, so people scrubbed with salt, chalk, ground coral, or chewed on fibrous sticks, hoping to dislodge the remnants of last week's bread and mead. Smiling wide was rare. Medieval art shows even saints with lips firmly sealed, as if they knew their dental situation wasn't winning any troubadour's praise. Breath was an even trickier beast. Garlic, eels, and ale were dietary staples, and minty freshness was a fantasy. Women chewed parsley, fennel seeds, cloves, or cinnamon sticks, trying to mask the evidence of breakfast. Some went wild, gargling charcoal mixed with honey to draw out toxins, a practice as effective as praying for a dental miracle. Public affection was kept at a distance, and a well-placed fan or pomander, a metal orb stuffed with herbs like rosemary or cloves, could save you from olfactory disaster. Conversations were held at arm's length, with a subtle wave of a scented handkerchief to keep the air tolerable. Bathing was more aspiration than habit, a luxury limited by access, season, and the church's growing disapproval of communal bathhouses. So, scent management became an art form, a desperate dance to mask the realities of heavy woolen garments and sweltering summers. Pomanders, those herb-filled orbs, were worn like jewellery, their spicy aroma a shield against the world's less pleasant smells. Perfumed gloves, handkerchiefs, and even undergarments were doused in floral waters or vinegar infusions, which smelled marginally better than sweat and despair. The wealthy tucked rose petals into their shoes or braided lavender into their hair, ensuring they wafted elegance with every step. Some went further, stuffing their bed linens with herbs or sprinkling their cloaks with powdered cloves, as if they could outrun their own humanity. It wasn't about smelling divine, it was about not smelling like the stable boy after a long day. Men weren't spared the beauty grind, though their standards were less punishing. The ideal medieval man was tall, lean, and broad-shouldered, with pale skin and gently curled hair that suggested he could wield a sword, but preferred to dictate poetry about it. Tanned, or overly muscular? That screamed labourer, a fate worse than death in the eyes of the court. Instead, men wore fitted tunics, cinched belts, and absurdly longed shoes that could double as weapons in a pinch. Feathered caps, fur-lined hoods, and cloaks embroidered with gold added flair, signalling wealth without the stench of effort. Some noblemen even curled their hair with hot irons, a task delegated to a servant because touching a tool was beneath them. The goal was effortless nobility, as if you were born gorgeous with a side of inherited castles and a well-trained castles. To slouch was to sin. To sweat was to betray your class. A nobleman glided through life, his posture impeccable, his disdain palpable, his beauty a birthright. Beauty in the Middle Ages wasn't just a look. It was a moral and spiritual gauntlet, a tightrope stretched between divine favour and damnation. A flawless face, clear skin, symmetrical features, ghostly pallor was seen as a sign of God's blessing, proof you were chosen, pure, or at least not stealing sheep on the side. Poets wove odes to women whose beauty mirrored the heavens, while preachers nodded approvingly, linking loveliness to virtue. But there was a catch. Knowing you were beautiful was a one-way ticket to sin. Vanity was the enemy, a slippery slope to pride, seduction, or worse, French tendencies. Women's beauty was a double-edged sword, often blamed for tempting men, as if men had no agency in the face of a well-placed blush or a fluttering lash. A made-up face, a stray lock of hair, or a too bold glance could earn you accusations of immorality, or, in darker times, witchcraft. Some believed beauty itself was a demonic illusion, a glamour conjured by sorceresses to lead righteous men astray. A few stunning women were even burned at the stake, their beauty deemed too potent, too dangerous, as if their faces alone could unravel the moral fabric of a village. Meanwhile, plain looks could mark you as morally deficient or simply unlucky, a divine oversight in a world where appearance was destiny. The pursuit of this ideal was a symphony of suffering, a testament to human endurance in the name of elegance. Women smeared their skin with corrosive pastes, quicklime, arsenic, vinegar, and animal dung, to strip hair from their foreheads, brows, and arms, leaving their skin blistered, red, and sometimes ulcerated. The stench was unbearable, the pain searing. But the result was a smooth, angelic brow that seemed to touch the divine. They scraped their hairlines with hot tweezers or pumice stones, often drawing blood or slicing skin to shape a forehead worthy of a saint. Some marked their scalps with ash or charcoal for precision, turning agony into art. To brighten their complexion from within, they drank toxic brews, white lead, vinegar, or mild poison water, only to face hair loss, vomiting, or kidney failure. Hair was soaked in urine, lye, and saffron, then baked under the sun until scalps burned or went patchy, the golden glow a hard-won trophy. Kirtles and surcoats squeezed torsos until breathing was a luxury, and fainting at a feast was less a crisis than a mark of refined fragility, earning whispers of admiration from the court. Blue dye or charcoal traced veins on arms and chests, mimicking the delicate translucence of someone too noble to live fully in their body. Some dusted powders to fake a feverish flush, as if they'd just risen from a sickbed, a look that screamed, "I'm frail and therefore fabulous." Bloodletting was another grim ritual, with some nobles draining small amounts weekly, mimicking cupping to maintain that ghostly pallor. The process left them weak, dizzy, but undeniably elegant, their faintness a badge of their elevated status. And for those soulful, teary eyes, smoke, onions, or cloths soaked in digestive juices were held near the face, stinging and burning to produce that glistening, emotional look. The risks were high: irritation, infection, even blindness. But the payoff was a gaze that could stop a knight in his tracks. Every step of this beauty regimen was a gamble, a dance with danger that blurred the line between devotion and destruction. In the end, medieval beauty was more than a quest for aesthetics. It was a crucible of identity, morality, and survival. Every plucked brow, every blistered scalp, every poisoned breath was a testament to a world where beauty was a currency, a weapon, and a prayer. Women, and some men, suffered, bled, and teetered on the edge of ruin, all for a fleeting moment of ethereal perfection that aligned them with the divine. They painted their faces with lead, shaved their foreheads raw, and cinched their waists until they saw stars, not because they were vain, but because beauty was a language of power, a way to transcend the mud and toil of mortal life. As we look back, there's something hauntingly profound in their dedication, a reminder that beauty, in any era, is as much about sacrifice as it is about splendor. It's a story of human resilience, of chasing an impossible ideal through pain and poison, and of finding, in the flicker of a candle-lit mirror, a glimpse of something eternal. Under Darius, the Immortals trained rigorously in ranged combat, siege warfare, and battlefield coordination. Greek observers later described their terrifying efficiency, noting how they fired volleys of arrows while advancing behind their wicker shields, never breaking formation. Their adaptability made them indispensable in the empire's vast and diverse territories, from the mountains of Anatolia to the plains of Mesopotamia. As Darius's empire stretched from Egypt to the Indus Valley, rebellions were a constant challenge. The Immortals were often the first to respond, quelling uprisings in regions like Elam, Babylon, and Scythia. Their actions served as both punishment and warning. The empire was always watching, and the king's authority was absolute. Under Darius, the Immortals gained a darker reputation, not just as elite warriors, but as instruments of fear and retribution. Their image was immortalized in the stone carvings of Persepolis, where they stood in perfect stylized lines facing eternity as identical figures. These were not mere portraits but deliberate propaganda, designed to convey a singular message. The immortals were ever present, ever armed, and eternal. To step out of line was to invite their wrath, whether 1 or 10,000. The immortals reached the pinnacle of their legend during the reign of Xerxes the Great, most notably at the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE. This clash, now immortalized through centuries of art, literature, and cinema, was more than a military engagement. It was a symbolic collision between the ordered might of the Persian Empire and the defiant individualism of the Greek city-states. Leading Xerxes' massive invasion of Greece, the immortals served as his elite vanguard, their reputation as an invincible force preceding them across the Aegean. At Thermopylae, they encountered resistance that shook their mythos to its core. King Leonidas, leading a small force of Greeks, including the famed 300 Spartans, held the narrow mountain pass against wave after wave of Persian assaults. On the second day, Xerxes unleashed the immortals, expecting them to shatter the Greek line with ease. These were, after all, the elite of the elite, the king's finest warriors. But the confined terrain of the pass nullified their advantages. Their bows were nearly useless in such close quarters, and their shorter spears could not penetrate the long doru of the Greek hoplites, who fought in tight, interlocking phalanxes honed for precisely this kind of combat. For hours, the immortals clashed with the disciplined Spartans, suffering heavy losses. Herodotus, perhaps with a touch of Greek pride, noted that they fared no better than ordinary troops. This was not merely a military setback, but a fracture in their invincible image. The immortals, once gods of war clad in silk and scale, bled and died at Thermopylae. For the first time, the illusion of their immortality cracked under the weight of Spartan spears and Greek resolve. Yet, even in defeat, they remained formidable. They adapted, regrouped, and marched onward, embodying endurance over invincibility. The true genius of the immortals lay not in their weapons or tactics, but in their system. Their immortality was not a product of magic or divine favour, but of cold, efficient bureaucracy. When an immortal fell, another took his place instantly. No mourning, no ceremony, only seamless substitution. The Achaemenid Empire's logistical prowess ensured a constant pool of trained recruits, ready to maintain the sacred 10,000. Officers known as Hazarapatis, or commanders of 1,000, oversaw recruitment, discipline, and supply, supported by a network of sub-commanders, scribes, and quartermasters. A soldier lost in Egypt was replaced from Susa. An injury in Media triggered an immediate substitution. This system was not merely military, it was psychological, projecting an eternal, unbreakable force that could not be stopped. Beyond the battlefield, the immortals were diplomats in armour, embodying the elegance and power of the Achaemenid Empire. They accompanied ambassadors to foreign courts, not for protection, but as a display of imperial might. A small escort of perfectly synchronized immortals, clad in gold-laced tunics, entered cities like Athens or Babylon in silence, their presence alone enough to command respect. In satrapies, they served as a constant reminder of the king's authority, their watchful gaze stifling rebellion before it could take root. At the heart of the Achaemenid royal court, the immortals' role was far more complex than that of mere soldiers. They were a multifaceted force, embodying both the ceremonial grandeur and the silent menace of the empire. During grand occasions such as Nowruz, the Persian New Year festival, coronations, and diplomatic receptions, they stood as ceremonial guards, their disciplined ranks enhancing the king's majesty. Clad in resplendent tunics of red and purple, adorned with intricate embroidery and gleaming scale armour, they were a living testament to the empire's wealth and power. Their synchronized movements and stoic expressions created an aura of divine order, as if the king's authority was not just earthly but ordained by the gods. Their presence transformed these events into spectacles of imperial might, where every gesture and glance was calculated to inspire awe among courtiers, ambassadors, and visitors from distant lands. Yet, behind the polished facade of ceremony, the immortals operated with a subtler, more insidious purpose. They were the king's eyes and ears, tasked with monitoring the intricate web of courtly politics. In the opulent halls of Persepolis or Susa, where ambition and intrigue simmered among nobles, the immortals maintained/artifact were not just guards, but silent enforcers. They watched courtiers for signs of disloyalty, sniffed out whispers of treason, and ensured the king's will was upheld with quiet efficiency. Some historians argue they functioned as an internal intelligence agency, their constant vigilance ensuring that loyalty was never optional. A single glance from an immortal could silence a room, their presence a constant reminder that betrayal was not an option. This dual role, warrior and envoy, enforcer and ornament, set the immortals apart from other elite units of the ancient world. While most elite forces, like the Greek hoplites, were defined solely by their battlefield prowess, the immortals served a broader imperial strategy. They were not just soldiers, but symbols of the empire's eternal presence. Their richly adorned uniforms and disciplined silence spoke of both elegance and menace, making them as effective in diplomatic halls as on the battlefield. They accompanied ambassadors to foreign courts, not merely for protection, but as a display of Persia's unmatched sophistication and power. A small contingent of immortals, moving in perfect unison, could intimidate a foreign ruler without a single word, their very existence a negotiation. In satrapies, their presence reminded local governors of the king's unyielding authority, often quelling rebellion before it could begin. Their ability to inspire awe and fear without drawing a blade was a testament to their unique role in the Achaemenid system, where symbols were as potent as swords. As the Achaemenid Empire aged, however, the immortals' legend began to fade. Under later kings like Artaxerxes and Darius III, the disciplined purity of the unit eroded. Political favoritism seeped into the ranks as powerful nobles secured positions for their unqualified sons, diluting the immortal spirit. The rigorous standards that had once defined the unit, merit, discipline, and unwavering loyalty, gave way to nepotism and complacency. The once sacred number of 10,000, maintained through relentless logistics, became a hollow symbol as the empire's administrative machinery weakened. By the time Alexander the Great launched his invasion in 334 BCE, the immortals were a shadow of their former glory, their invincibility more myth than reality. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, the immortals fought with courage alongside the Persian center to defend Darius III. Yet, they were no match for the tactical brilliance and relentless momentum of Alexander's Macedonian phalanxes. The immortals, once a seamless, self-replenishing force, were outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. Their system of instant replacement, which had made their losses invisible, faltered under the strain of constant warfare. The myth of their immortality crumbled as their numbers dwindled without immediate replenishment. When Alexander marched into Persepolis and seized the royal palace, the immortals were nowhere to be found, their once unbroken line shattered. The fall of Persepolis marked the end of their dominance, as the empire they had embodied collapsed under the weight of Alexander's conquest. Yet the immortals' legacy did not vanish with their defeat. Alexander, a master of adaptation, recognized the value of their disciplined structure and incorporated Persian military traditions into his own army. He saw in the immortals a model of organization and continuity that could enhance his own forces, blending their precision with Macedonian ferocity. Centuries later, the Sasanian Empire, which rose from the ashes of the Parthian era, revived the concept of an elite force, sometimes referred to by historians as the New Immortals. Though not direct descendants, these warriors echoed the original Immortals' mission, to embody imperial invincibility through discipline, uniformity, and an aura of permanence. Clad in heavy armor and wielding lances and bows, they carried forward the idea of an elite unit that served as both a military and symbolic force, projecting the empire's power across its vast territories. The Immortals' influence extended far beyond their time, resonating in the minds of generals, kings, and chroniclers across centuries. Roman scholars, such as Ammianus Marcellinus, referenced the structure of the Persian elite guard when discussing the organization of their own Praetorian Guard, noting the efficiency of a system that prioritized continuity and discipline. Byzantine historians, centuries later, studied the Immortals' model, admiring their ability to maintain a constant, unchanging presence. In the early Islamic period, Arab storytellers wove tales of the 10,000 warriors who once guarded ancient kings, their spears gleaming like a silver forest under the desert sun. These stories, passed down through generations, kept the Immortals' legend alive, transforming them into a symbol of enduring power. Even in the modern era, figures like Napoleon Bonaparte studied the Persian military system, praising its logistical precision and psychological impact. Napoleon, a master of military organization, saw in the Immortals a blueprint for creating a force that could project both strength and permanence, an idea he incorporated into his own elite units. However, modern media has often misrepresented the Immortals, portraying them as monstrous, demonic figures or masked assassins in films and novels. This distortion belies their true nature, which was far more compelling. The Immortals were not supernatural beings, but human, terrifyingly human. Ordinary men, through relentless training, psychological conditioning, and an unyielding system of continuity, were transformed into instruments of imperial will. Their greatest weapon was not their short swords, bows, or wicker shields, but the idea they embodied. An eternal, unstoppable force, a shadow on the horizon that never faded. The Immortals' legend endures not because they were undefeated, indeed they suffered notable losses, such as at Thermopylae and Gaugamela, but because they represented the zenith of state-controlled power. They were an army that did not age, did not question, and did not falter. To the Greeks, who valued individual heroism and chaotic valor, the Immortals were an eerie anomaly. Their precision, faceless unity, and silent discipline stood in stark contrast to the Greek ethos of personal glory. Herodotus, the Greek historian, dubbed them Immortals, not because they were impervious to death, but because they could not be seen to die. Their system of immediate replacement ensured that their presence remained eternal, an unbroken line that seemed to defy mortality itself. The Immortals' influence transcended the Achaemenid Empire, shaping the military doctrines of subsequent empires. The Roman Praetorian Guard, tasked with protecting emperors and enforcing their will, bore echoes of the Immortals' dual role as warriors and political enforcers. The Sasanian Empire's elite cavalry, often called the New Immortals by historians, carried forward the concept of a disciplined, symbolic force that embodied imperial invincibility. The Immortals' carvings at Persepolis, depicting them in perfect, identical lines facing eternity, continue to captivate historians, archaeologists, and visitors to this day. These stone reliefs are not mere art, but a testament to the Immortals' enduring mythos, a visual reminder of their role as the eternal guardians of an empire. The Immortals were more than a military unit. They were a system, a symbol, and a legacy. Their training, which began in childhood and emphasized absolute obedience, endurance, and precision, created warriors who were both human and larger than life. Their system of constant replacement ensured that the unit remained at 10,000 strong, a feat of logistical brilliance that made them appear immortal. Their role as both warriors and envoys allowed them to project power in battle and diplomacy alike, their presence a constant reminder of the Empire's reach. Even in defeat, their legacy lived on, influencing military traditions and captivating the imaginations of those who followed. The Immortals' story is a reminder that true power lies not just in strength, but in organization, discipline, and perception. When meticulously sustained and endlessly replaced, a force can achieve something perilously close to immortality. Their carvings at Persepolis, their tales in ancient texts, and their echoes in later empires stand as proof of their enduring impact. The Immortals were not just soldiers, they were the embodiment of an empire's will, a shadow cast across history that continues to inspire awe and fear. Warrior women throughout history. Long before the Greek tales of Amazons captured imaginations, the Scythians roamed the vast Eurasian steppe, their nomadic warriors commanding both fear and reverence from the Black Sea to the Altai Mountains. Unlike most ancient cultures, where women were often confined to domestic roles, Scythian women were not tethered to looms or hearths. They galloped on horseback, drew bows with deadly precision, and charged into battle. These were not mere companions to male warriors, they led, fought, and killed with unmatched prowess. This was no anomaly. It was the heartbeat of their culture. Greek historian Herodotus, awestruck by these fierce women, recounted tribes where marriage was forbidden until a woman had slain an enemy in combat. What he penned as exotic tales has since been validated by archaeology. Across the vast, windswept plains of Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and southern Russia, where the horizon stretches unbroken under an endless sky, ancient burial mounds known as kurgans rise like silent guardians of a forgotten age. These earthen tombs, sculpted by hands long turned to dust, hold secrets that defy the centuries, whispering of a people whose ferocity and freedom reshaped the world's understanding of warriors. Beneath their grassy slopes, archaeologists have unearthed treasures that shatter modern assumptions. The remains of young Scythian women, their bones cradled alongside bows taut from countless draws, arrows fletched for war, and swords etched with the scars of combat. One such grave, uncovered in the golden haze of a summer dawn, revealed a woman whose story speaks through her wounds, an arrowhead lodged in her spine, its iron tip a grim testament to a battle fought and lost. Her body, clad in armor hammered to fit her frame, lay surrounded by treasures, gold torques gleaming like captured sunlight, intricate beads, and vessels filled with offerings for the afterlife. These were no mere ornaments. The weapons bore the unmistakable marks of use, their edges nicked from clashing steel, their hafts worn smooth by hands that knew no fear. She was no ceremonial figure, she was a warrior, her life and death woven into the fabric of a culture that thrived on the edge of survival. Scythian society, born of the unforgiving steppe, demanded resilience and adaptability, leaving no room for rigid divides between men and women. The steppe was a crucible, its harsh winds and endless horizons forging a people who lived by the rhythm of hoofbeats and the twang of bowstrings. Men and women rode as one, their horses' flanks slick with sweat as they hunted deer across the grasslands, or defended their tribes from invaders. Girls, barely tall enough to reach a saddle, trained alongside boys, their small hands learning to nock arrows and draw bows with a strength that belied their youth. They donned leather trousers, stitched with sinew and toughened by years of wear, and strapped on armor that clinked softly with each step, its weight a familiar embrace. Their hair, braided tightly or left to flow like a banner in the wind, and their skin, etched with tattoos of swirling beasts and mythic symbols, mirrored those of their male kin, rendering them nearly indistinguishable in the chaos of a charge. On the battlefield, gender melted away, lost in the blur of galloping hooves and the storm of arrows that darkened the sky. A Scythian woman could lose a shaft with lethal precision, her aim as steady as any man's, her courage a fire that burned brighter than the sun. Yet when the dust settled and the tribe returned to camp, traditional roles often re-emerged under the starlit canopy. Women wove stories by firelight, tended to sacred rituals that honored the spirits of the steppe, and nurtured families, their lives a seamless tapestry of war and hearth. These roles did not clash, they intertwined, each strengthening the other, in a culture that valued survival above all. The Greek myths of Amazons, those fierce warrior women of legend, likely sprang from awestruck tales of these Scythians, glimpsed by traders or soldiers who could scarcely believe what they saw. But while Amazons faded into the realm of fantasy, the Scythians were flesh and blood, their legacy carved in the bones of their enemies. They clashed with Persian armies, their arrows piercing the ranks of Darius's vast hosts. They skirmished with Greeks along the Black Sea, their speed and ferocity outmatching heavier phalanxes. And they sent shivers through Macedonian ranks, even as Alexander's empire pressed against their borders. For centuries, Scythian men and women wove a legacy of fire and freedom across the steppe, their names carried on the wind, their stories etched in the earth itself. Far across time and continents, in the lush, vibrant heart of the West African kingdom of Dahomey, now modern Benin, a different force of women warriors rose, their names striking terror into the hearts of European colonizers, neighboring kingdoms, and any soul reckless enough to challenge their might. Known as the Agogi, they were dubbed the Dahomey Amazons by French observers, who saw in their ferocity a shadow of ancient Greek myths. Yet these women were no mere echo of legend, they were real, their blades as sharp as their resolve, their courage a flame that burned through the humid air of the tropical coast. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Agogi had transformed from humble origins, perhaps as elephant hunters tracking their prey through dense forests, or palace attendants serving the king's court, into the elite royal guard of Dahomey's monarch. But their role was far more than ceremonial. They were a disciplined infantry, forged in the crucible of war to kill, defend, and stand unyielding against any foe. The Agogi's journey began in childhood, when girls were chosen for their strength, spirit, or defiance, plucked from their families and thrust into a world of relentless training. Their discipline was absolute, a testament to their unwavering commitment. They ran through obstacle courses strewn with thorns, the brambles tearing at their skin as they pushed forward, undeterred by pain. They sparred with sharpened machetes and clubs, the clash of steel and wood echoing through training grounds, each strike a lesson in survival. Swearing oaths of celibacy and absolute loyalty to the king, they severed personal ties, their lives dedicated to a higher calling. Clad in braided sashes that fluttered like battle flags, they wielded muskets that roared with gunpowder, machetes that gleamed in the tropical sun, and clubs that delivered bone-crushing blows. But their greatest weapon was their psychological might, a force that unnerved even the most seasoned soldiers. European observers in the 19th century, accustomed to the rigid hierarchies of colonial armies, stood aghast at the Agojis' unflinching brutality. One French officer, his words trembling in his journal, described a warrior who, with a single fluid stroke, tore open a man's throat, her face a mask of calm as she wiped her blade clean on her sash, the blood soaking into the fabric like a grim signature. Another account tells of an Agoji who, during a raid, faced a line of enemy soldiers and charged without hesitation, her machete flashing as she cut through their ranks, her presence a storm of controlled fury. These were no ornamental soldiers. They were shock troops, the spearhead of Dahome's military might. They led daring night raids under the cover of darkness, their footsteps silent in the forest as they struck enemy camps. They orchestrated ambushes in dense jungles, using the terrain to outwit larger forces. In open battles they charged with relentless precision, their war cries piercing the air as they clashed with foes who underestimated their resolve. During the Franco-Dahomean Wars of the 1890s, the Agoji faced French colonial troops, their muskets and machetes pitted against modern rifles and artillery. Outnumbered and outgunned, they fought street by street, their courage forcing French commanders to rethink their strategies and confront their own biases about women in combat. The Agoji were not just warriors. They were a testament to the power of defiance, their legacy a flame that burned brighter than any myth, illuminating a world where women could wield power as fiercely as any man. During the Franco-Dahomean Wars of the 1890s, the Agoji faced French colonial forces, vastly outnumbered and outgunned, yet they launched daring night raids, set cunning ambushes and fought street by street to shield their kingdom. Their courage forced French commanders to rethink their strategies and challenge their biases about women in combat. Beyond their battlefield valor, the Agoji's significance lay in their defiance of a patriarchal world. They held sway in Dahome's court, advising kings, performing sacred rites, and shaping diplomacy with blades in hand, not from the shadows. Though Dahomey fell to the French, the Agoji's legend endured, inspiring modern fictional warriors like the Dera Milaje in Marvel's Black Panther. But, as always, reality outshines fiction. In the blood-soaked annals of Japan's medieval past, one figure cuts through the fog of history: Tomoe Gozen, a samurai warrior of the late 12th century. During the Genkei War, a savage civil struggle between the Minamoto and Taira clans that birthed Japan's first shogunate, Tomoe was no mere bystander. She was a commander, a swordswoman and an archer, whose skill in combat was as feared as it was revered. Her story shines brightest in the Heike Monogatari, a war epic blending fact with poetic grandeur. It paints her as a vision of beauty, fair-skinned with flowing hair and delicate features, but swiftly pivots to her true power, an archer of unmatched strength and a swordswoman worth 1,000 warriors. Her beauty and lethality were not at odds, they were one. Serving Minamoto no Yoshinaka, a warlord and possibly her lover, Tomoe rode into the fray during his campaign to seize Kyoto. Far from a camp follower, she led troops, clashing steel in the heart of battle. At the Battle of Owazu in 1184, as rival Minamoto forces closed in, Yoshinaka called for a final stand. Tomoe did not waver. In a legendary moment, perhaps embellished, perhaps true, she unhorsed an enemy rider, pinned him to the earth, and severed his head with a single stroke before remounting and charging back into the chaos. This act of cold precision cemented her as a symbol of unshakable resolve. Her fate after the war is shrouded in mystery. Some say she was captured and forced into marriage, others that she became a nun, retreating into solitude, and some believe she slipped away, a phantom fading into legend. Yet her legacy persists in Japanese theatre, folklore and memory. In a world bound by rigid gender roles, Tomoe Gozen stood defiant, her blade a testament to her right to exist beyond society's constraints. In the 1st century CE, the Roman Empire stood as an unyielding colossus, ordered, disciplined and seemingly invincible. Yet a Celtic queen named Boudica, her fiery hair blazing like a comet, nearly shattered its foundations. As the wife of Prasutagus, king of the Iceni tribe in what is now eastern England, Boudica lived under Rome's shadow as a client ruler's spouse. Prasutagus, allowed to govern as long as he maintained peace, left a will to secure his family's future, but upon his death Rome disregarded it, seizing his lands with brutal arrogance. Roman officials flogged Boudica in public and, according to Tacitus, violated her daughters, a calculated act to crush dissent. Instead, it ignited a rebellion of unparalleled ferocity. In 60 or 61 CE, Boudica rallied disparate British tribes into a unified force, leading them not as a figurehead, but as a warrior. Roman chroniclers depict her charging into battle from a chariot, spear raised, her gold torque gleaming against her tunic, her crimson hair streaming like a banner of vengeance. Part priestess, part general, she was a storm of fury. Her army razed Camulodunum, now Colchester, to ash, then turned to Londinium, the seat of modern London, slaughtering Roman settlers and leaving the city in ruins. Estimates suggest her forces killed over 70,000 Romans and their allies in mere months, leaving a trail of smouldering defiance. But Rome, under Governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, struck back. Lured into a pitched battle, Boudica's vast but undisciplined army fell to Roman tactics. Facing defeat, she is said to have chosen poison over capture. Though her rebellion crumbled, her legacy soared. Roman scribes called her a barbarian, yet her courage demanded respect. For the British, particularly in later centuries, she became an emblem of defiance against oppression, her name a rallying cry against invaders and tyrants alike. Amid the war-torn steppes of Central Asia during the Mongol Empire's zenith, a woman named Kutulun emerged, humbling warriors and princes not with blades but with raw physical prowess. The great-great-granddaughter of Genghis Khan, Kutulun didn't merely bask in his legacy, she forged her own, one wrestling match at a time. Born around 1260 CE, she was the daughter of Kaidu Khan, a fierce rival to Kublai Khan. Raised as a warrior prince, Kutulun mastered archery, horsemanship and battlefield strategy, but her true fame came from wrestling, a revered Mongol tradition. The Persian historian Rashid al-Din recounts her bold vow. She would marry only the man who could defeat her in a match. Suitors came in droves, princes, warriors, chieftains, and left in disgrace, often wagering horses or gold only to lose them. Kutulun amassed a reported 10,000 horses, her victories making her one of the steppe's wealthiest women. Yet her legend wasn't confined to the wrestling ring. She rode into battle beside her father, commanding troops and shattering enemy lines in campaigns against rival Mongols and Chinese forces. Kaidu trusted her as his chief military advisor, even considering her as his heir, a radical notion in a male-dominated empire. This sparked murmurs of dissent among Mongol nobles, who deemed her influence unnatural. Ultimately, Kaidu chose a male successor, but Kutulun's legacy endured. Marco Polo, traversing the Mongol Empire, wrote of a princess who fought with the ferocity of a tiger and matched any man in skill. Later accounts tried to soften her story, casting her as a romantic figure, but Kutulun was no mere tale. She rose in a world that bowed to men, her strength and will unstoppable. In an era when women were barred from voting, owning land, or wearing men's attire without risking punishment, a French teenager named Joan of Arc donned armour and led armies. Born in 1412 in the village of Domremy, Joan was an illiterate peasant with no military training, yet at 17 she reshaped the 100 Years' War between France and England. Guided by what she claimed were divine voices, those of Saints Michael, Catherine and Margaret, Joan declared her mission to expel the English and crown Charles the Dauphin as king. Her audacious claim could have marked her as delusional, but her conviction won her an audience with Charles VII. Tested by clergy and courtiers, she emerged unscathed, her charisma undeniable. Clad in white armour, her banner aloft, she was sent to Orléans, a city under English siege. Her presence alone reignited French morale. Leading charges and braving arrows, Joan turned the tide. lifting the siege in a stunning victory. Known as the Maid of Orléans, she became a symbol of divine favour and French resilience. In the midst of the 100 Years' War, a young peasant girl named Joan of Arc achieved a series of victories that seemed nothing short of miraculous, her resolve as unyielding as the armour she wore. Having rallied the French at Orléans, lifting a siege that had choked the city's hope, she fulfilled a prophecy born of her divine visions by escorting Charles the Dauphin to Reims for his coronation in 1429. The cathedral's ancient stones echoed with the weight of the moment as Charles VII was crowned, his legitimacy sealed under the gaze of a teenager who claimed to hear the voices of saints. Joan, clad in white armour, her banner emblazoned with lilies and angels, stood not as a bystander, but as a divine instrument, her presence a beacon for a fractured France. Her triumphs at Orléans de Patay and beyond electrified a nation weary of English domination, her name whispered in awe from taverns to noble halls. Yet success, as it often does, bred envy and fear. The same courts that once marvelled at her conviction grew wary of her influence, and her enemies sharpened their blades. In 1430, Burgundian allies of the English ambushed her at Compiègne, dragging her from her horse and into captivity. Tried by a pro-English ecclesiastical court, she faced a litany of charges: heresy, witchcraft, and the audacious crime of wearing men's clothing, a defiance of both gender norms and divine order in their eyes. The trial was less a quest for justice than a stage for her destruction, her accusers wielding scripture and law like weapons. At just 19, in Rouen marketplace, she was bound to a stake, flames licking at her feet as a crowd watched in silence, horror or grim approval. But her death in 1431 did not erase her. She became a martyr, her legend swelling with each retelling. The Church, in a rare act of contrition, overturned her conviction in 1456, acknowledging the trial's injustice. Centuries later, in 1920, she was canonized as a saint, her name etched not only in religious history, but in the soul of France, a symbol of courage that transcended the boundaries of class, gender, and time. As Japan stood on the cusp of transformation in the late 1860s, shedding the feudal traditions of the samurai for the modern ambitions of the Meiji era, one woman refused to let the old ways fade without a fight: Nakano Takeiko. Born in 1847 to a family steeped in scholarship and martial valor, wielded her naginata, a bladed pole weapon of elegance and deadly reach, and carved her name into history as the last true Onobu geisha, a female samurai warrior. Raised in Edo, she grew up immersed in Confucian classics, the delicate strokes of calligraphy, and the disciplined art of combat. The naginata, with its long shaft and curved blade, was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of the samurai women who guarded their homes and honor. Under the tutelage of her adoptive father, a master of martial arts, Nakano honed her skills until they rivaled those of the finest swordsmen in her domain. Her movements were a dance of precision, the naginata an extension of her will, slicing through the air with the grace of a crane and the force of a storm. By her early 20s, she was not only a warrior but a teacher, instructing other women in the ways of the blade. Her lessons a blend of strength and philosophy in a world that increasingly dismissed such traditions. When the Boshin War erupted in 1868, pitting the imperial forces against the Tokugawa shogunate, Nakano's loyalty lay with Eizu, a bastion of samurai resistance. Women were barred from formal military service, but Nakano would not be sidelined. She formed the Joshitai, an all-female unit of warriors who donned hakama pants and armor, their resolve as unyielding as the men beside them. In the Battle of Eizu, amid the smoke and chaos of rifle fire, Nakano led her sisters-in-arms into brutal hand-to-hand combat. The clash of steel against steel, the cries of the wounded, and the crack of imperial guns filled the air as she fought, her naginata flashing like lightning. She felled several enemies, her skill a testament to years of training. Before a bullet tore through her chest, knowing capture would bring dishonor, she turned to her sister Yuko and made a final request: to be beheaded, her dignity preserved in death. Buried with her naginata at a temple in Fukushima, her grave became a quiet shrine to her defiance. Today, statues of Nakano stand across Japan, particularly in Aizu, where she is revered not only as a warrior, but as a woman who stood against the tide of modernity, patriarchy, and mortality itself. her legacy a blade that time cannot dull. In the smouldering crucible of World War II's Eastern Front, a young Ukrainian woman named Lyudmila Pavlichenko became a spectre of death to German soldiers, earning the chilling sobriquet Lady Death. A sniper with 309 confirmed kills, including 36 enemy snipers, she remains the deadliest female marksman in recorded history. Born in 1916 in Bila Tserkva, Pavlichenko was a scholar with a competitive streak, her sharp mind matched by an even sharper aim. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, the 24-year-old history student at Kiev University set aside her books and took up a Mosin Nagant rifle, volunteering for the Red Army. Offered a nurse's role, she refused, demanding a place in combat, a demand she backed with unrelenting skill. Deployed to the sieges of Odessa and Sevastopol, she became a ghost in the frozen, war-torn landscape, lying motionless for hours in snow or mud, her breath steady, her eyes locked on distant targets. Officers, machine gunners and rival snipers fell to her precision, each shot a calculated act of defiance against the invaders who ravaged her homeland. Her kills mounted, a grim tally that spoke of both her skill and her fury. Pavlichenko's reputation grew so formidable that the Soviet command pulled her from the front in 1942, sending her on a diplomatic tour to the United States, Canada, and the UK. There she stood before crowds, her quiet intensity commanding attention. She formed an unlikely friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt, who admired her intellect and composure, and faced down reporters with biting wit, dismissing their questions about makeup or fashion with a sniper's disdain for triviality. Her speeches urged the Allies to open a second front, her words carrying the weight of someone who had seen war's brutal truth. After the war, she returned to her studies, earning her degree and becoming a historian, her mind as sharp as her aim. She also trained a new generation of Soviet snipers, passing on her hard-won expertise despite the scars, physical and emotional, left by the war. Awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union Medal, Pavlichenko remains a towering figure in Russia and Ukraine, her legacy a silent challenge to those who doubt women's place in the crucible of combat. She didn't argue for her right to fight, she simply proved it, one deadly shot at a time. For every Joan of Arc, Nakano Takeko or Lyudmila Pavlichenko, there are countless warrior women whose names have been lost to the shadows of history, their stories dimmed by a narrative crafted largely by men. Yet they existed, fierce and unyielding, across continents and centuries, their silence not a choice, but an imposition. In the 1st century CE, the Trung sisters, Trung Trak and Trung Ni, ignited a rebellion against Chinese domination in Vietnam. From the backs of war elephants they led thousands, their voices rallying a people weary of foreign rule. For 3 years they governed an independent state, their banners fluttering over a land briefly free. But the Chinese Empire, vast and relentless, crushed their resistance, and the sisters fell, their defeat a tragedy, but their courage a spark that endures. Today, temples and festivals across Vietnam honor their defiance, though global histories often pass them by, their names mere whispers in the annals of the world. In 1900, Ya Asantewaa, Queen Mother of the Ashanti Empire in West Africa, stood against the tide of British colonialism. When the British demanded the Golden Stool, the sacred symbol of Ashanti sovereignty, she refused to bow. Her speeches, fiery and unyielding, rallied her people to arms. Leading her warriors into battle, she fought not for glory but for her nation's soul, her leadership a testament to the power of a woman who would not yield. Though the British prevailed, her resistance echoed through time, a beacon of defiance in a colonized world. Viking shield maidens, too, carved their place in history, their graves revealing swords, shields and war horses, not ceremonial tokens but the tools of warriors. Archaeological finds in Scandinavia confirm their presence, women who fought and died alongside men, their legacy woven into sagas that blur myth and truth. In the American Southwest, Lawson, an Apache warrior and spiritual leader, rode beside her brother Victorio, her prowess in battle matched by her mystic insight. Known as a shield to her people, she fought to protect her kin from encroaching settlers, her courage as vital as any chief's. Across eras and regions, these women, queens, peasants, commanders and rebels shattered the myth that war was a male domain. They fought not always to conquer, but to defend, to preserve their homes, cultures, and families. Their stories, once buried under the weight of patriarchal chronicles, are now rising to the surface through scholarship and popular culture. Each rediscovered name, each Trung sister, each Ya Asantua, each Lozan, is a reminder that history is not only what was written, but what was erased. These women did not seek fame, they sought respect, a place in a world that often denied them one. And as their voices echo through time, the world is finally beginning to listen. Their legacies are testament to the unbreakable spirit of those who fought, not for glory, but for the right to stand tall. Ancient music and instruments. In the ancient cradle of Mesopotamia, the land we now know as modern-day Iraq, music was far more than a source of amusement. It was a profound expression of ritual, power, and a language that connected the earthly to the divine. Among the many instruments that defined this vibrant cultural tapestry, the lyre stood as a towering symbol of spiritual and artistic significance. One of the earliest known stringed instruments, the Mesopotamian lyre, traces its origins back over 4,500 years to the Sumerian city of Ur, a bustling hub where music was intricately woven into the fabric of both sacred temple ceremonies and opulent royal court life. These lyres were not mere wooden harps. They were masterpieces of artistry and craftsmanship, adorned with precious materials such as gold, silver, and lapis lazuli, and often decorated with intricate carvings of animals, particularly bulls, which symbolize strength and divine authority. A remarkable example is the bull-headed lyre, uncovered in the 1920s by archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley in a royal tomb at Ur. Its soundbox was meticulously crafted to resemble a bull's body, with the instrument's head sheathed in shimmering gold leaf and its beard fashioned from vibrant lapis lazuli. This elaborate design was not merely decorative. The bull held profound spiritual meaning, likely serving as a conduit to the divine, linking the music to the gods themselves. The lyre was played with the fingers or a small plectrum, producing a resonant, haunting tone that captivated listeners. While the precise melodies of ancient Mesopotamia remain lost to time, scholars have deduced that the Sumerians employed a heptatonic scale, a 7-note structure strikingly similar to modern Western music. The clay tablets, inscribed with some of the earliest forms of musical notation, provide tantalizing glimpses into a sophisticated system of music theory and scale construction, revealing a culture that understood music as both an art and a science. These lyres were not confined to the elite palaces of kings and nobles. In temples, they played a central role in religious life, accompanying hymns and offerings dedicated to deities such as Inanna, the goddess of love and war, and Enlil, the god of wind and storms. Through these performances, music became a sacred bridge, connecting mortals to the divine realm. In funerary rites, the lyre's mournful notes were believed to guide departed souls into the afterlife, serving as a poignant voice of transition and transformation. Mesopotamian musicians, far from being mere entertainers, held esteemed positions in society. Some were female priestesses revered for their spiritual roles, while others were court performers who memorized complex songs passed down through oral traditions. These musicians often began their training at a young age in specialized schools, alongside scribes, where they mastered the intricate interplay of rhythm, melody, and ritual. Today, replicas of these ancient lyres, painstakingly reconstructed, are played in museums and cultural exhibitions, their soft, twanging echoes transporting listeners back to a time when humans in the Mesopotamian deserts wove beauty, meaning, and divinity through sound. Long before the compositions of Mozart, the ballads of medieval minstrels, or the epic songs of Homer, the lyre resonated with a primal pursuit of aesthetic and spiritual depth. In ancient Greece, music was not merely a pastime but a profound force known as ethos, believed to shape the soul and influence moral character. The aulos, a double-piped, reed-blown wind instrument, embodied this raw, emotional power in its most untamed form. Far from the gentle strains of the lyre, which was associated with Apollo, the god of harmony and order, the aulos was linked to Dionysus, the deity of wine, ecstasy, and unrestrained passion. Its piercing, intense sound, closer to the wail of a bagpipe than the delicate notes of a modern flute, resonated in diverse settings, from ecstatic rituals to dramatic theatrical performances and disciplined military marches. Crafted from materials such as wood, bone or ivory, the aulos consisted of 2 pipes, each equipped with its own reed and fingering holes, played simultaneously by a skilled musician known as an aulet. This required extraordinary breath control, often employing a technique called circular breathing, where the player inhaled through the nose while expelling air through the cheeks, allowing for continuous sound. The physical effort was so intense that it visibly contorted the player's face, leading to playful mockery from athletes, yet aulos players were widely respected, even revered in artistic and ritual contexts. The aulos was not an instrument for subtle ambience. It was a visceral force that stirred the blood and evoked powerful emotions. In the theatres of ancient Greece, it accompanied the tragedies of Sophocles and the comedies of Euripides, lending emotional depth and narrative momentum to performances that explored the heights and depths of human experience. In battle, its strident tones cut through the chaos, keeping hoplites in disciplined step as they marched into conflict. During Bacchic rituals, the aulos drove dancers into trance-like states, dissolving the boundaries between performer and divine possession. The philosopher Plato, in his Republic, viewed the aulos with ambivalence, criticizing its overwhelming emotional impact and favoring the intellectual clarity of the lyre and kithara. Yet even he could not deny its power to evoke a spectrum of emotions: sorrow, fury, or euphoria, often within a single breath. Fragments of ancient aeoloi, preserved in museums and modern reconstructions, reveal its raw, primal energy, a stark contrast to the lyre's mathematical precision. The aeolos was not about perfection, it was about release, embodying the sounds of frenzy, mourning, seduction, and war. In the ancient courts and scholarly studios of China, music was a philosophical pursuit, a harmonious reflection of the cosmic order that connected heaven and earth. 2 stringed zithers, the qin and the guzheng, stood at the heart of this tradition, carrying the weight of dynasties, meditative practices, and poetic introspection. The qin, with a history stretching over 3,000 years, was a 7-stringed fretless instrument, crafted from polished wood, producing delicate whisper-like tones, gentle slides, harmonics, and plucked notes that resonated like raindrops falling on ancient tiles. To Chinese scholars and sages, these subtle sounds were not mere music, but a mirror of universal balance, embodying the interplay of yin and yang. Confucius himself was said to have played the qin, believing it cultivated moral character, inner peace, and intellectual refinement. In ancient China, mastering the qin was not about becoming a performer, but about achieving a state of civilized harmony, a journey toward personal and spiritual enlightenment. By contrast, the guzheng was a younger, more vibrant instrument, designed for public performance and communal engagement. With 16 to 21 strings, or more in modern iterations, its curved wooden frame and movable bridges allowed for rich, resonant melodies and dramatic glissandos. Musicians plucked the strings with plectra attached to their fingers, creating cascades of notes that shimmered like flowing rivers or galloping horses. The guzheng was a staple in palaces, folk gatherings, and even military camps, where its bold, expressive sound captivated audiences. While the qin spoke to the introspective soul, the guzheng sang to the crowd, accompanying banquets, operas, and epic narratives that recounted tales of love, war, and history. Both instruments played distinct roles in ritual and storytelling. The qin provided a contemplative backdrop for poetry readings, philosophical discussions, and meditative practices, while the guzheng enlivened historical sagas and festive celebrations. In ancient China, these instruments also carried gendered associations. The qin was traditionally played by male scholars, aligning with Confucian ideals of intellectual discipline, while the guzheng, especially in later dynasties, became associated with female performers whose artistry graced courts and public gatherings. Yet both were revered, taught in formal musical academies, and integrated into the Confucian framework of balanced education, which valued music as a cornerstone of moral and cultural development. Today, the qin and guzheng remain vibrant in both classical and contemporary settings, their sounds serving as living echoes of China's ancient soul. They are not merely instruments, but vessels of philosophy, where every note carries the weight of centuries, guiding listeners toward virtue and emotional depth. In ancient Egypt, music was far more than a backdrop. It was a sacred conduit, a divine language that permeated temples, tombs, and daily life. From the courts of pharaohs to the fields of laborers, music was omnipresent, serving as a tool for worship, mourning, and celebration. Among the most iconic instruments was the harp, which evolved from simple, bow-like designs to tall, angular structures that stood as tall as a person. Plucked by temple musicians or court entertainers, these harps were not only artistic tools but also spiritual instruments, often depicted in tomb art, playing for the souls of the deceased, easing their passage into the afterlife. The sistrum, a metal rattle sacred to Hathor, the goddess of music, motherhood, and joy, produced a distinctive jangling sound when shaken. Used in temple rituals, it summoned deities, purified sacred spaces, and warded off evil spirits, its vibrant sound believed to maintain cosmic order. Flutes, crafted from reed or bone, added breathy melodies to processions, while double clarinets, played simultaneously, created rich, buzzing harmonies that prefigured the Greek aulus. Percussion instruments, including frame drums, hand clappers, and castanets, drove the rhythm of dances and festivals, infusing them with energy and vitality. The professional musicians in Egypt, many of whom were women, held significant roles as chantresses of Amun, or musicians of Isis, wielding spiritual authority through their performances. These women were not mere entertainers, but figures of divine power, their music honoring gods and marking transitions between life and death. While written musical notation from ancient Egypt is scarce, the vivid depictions of instruments in tomb and temple art reveal a culture that understood music as a blend of structure, emotion, and magic. Instruments were often buried with the elite, their owners believing they would play them again in the field of reeds, Egypt's vision of paradise. For the ancient Egyptians, music was not a fleeting pastime, but the eternal language of the divine, a bridge to the afterlife. In ancient Africa, long before written records etched history into stone, rhythm was the heartbeat of culture, a primal and immediate force that carried stories, laws, and identities. Drums were not mere instruments, they were voices that spoke, commanded, and preserved communal memory. The talking drum of West Africa, with its hourglass shape and adjustable leather cords, was a marvel of communication. Capable of mimicking the tonal patterns of spoken language, skilled drummers could convey entire phrases, announcing births, deaths, warnings, or royal decrees, across vast distances, making the drum a precursor to modern communication networks. Beyond its practical role, the talking drum held profound spiritual significance, summoning ancestors and deities in kingdoms like Kush, Ini, Ife, and Benin. In rituals, it marked initiations, healing ceremonies, and funerals, its rhythms believed to bridge the mortal world and the divine. African drums came in diverse forms: djembe, dundun, bugarabu, kidi, each with a specific role in the musical hierarchy. Carved from single logs, hollowed with precision, and fitted with animal hides, these drums were sacred objects, their creation accompanied by rituals passed down through generations. Percussion extended beyond drums to include rattles, bells, shakers, and thumb pianos, which layered complex polyrhythmic textures that Western music would not fully appreciate until centuries later. In African tradition, music was inseparable from movement. Listeners did not merely hear the rhythm, they danced, breathed, and lived it. Drummers were not performers, but conduits, channeling energy, spirit, and communal memory. These rhythms spread through trans-Saharan trade routes, along the Nile, and later through the Atlantic slave trade, influencing music in Brazil, the Caribbean, and beyond. Yet their essence remained rooted in Africa, where the beat was not entertainment, but identity, ancestry, and survival. High in the Andean mountains, where the air is thin and clouds seem to touch the earth, music emerged not from strings or percussion, but from the breath of the wind, resonating through the stone cities, terraced fields, and sacred sites of ancient civilizations like the Nazca, Moqui, and Inca. In these lofty realms, aerophones, flutes, whistles, and the iconic siku panpipes defined a musical tradition that was both ethereal and deeply rooted in the natural and spiritual world. The siku, a deceptively simple instrument, consisted of rows of bamboo or reed tubes, carefully cut to varying lengths and lashed together, sometimes in single or double rows. When played, it produced haunting, breathy harmonies that seemed to echo the voice of the mountains themselves. Musicians employed a technique known as hocketing, where two players alternated notes in rapid succession, creating a seamless melody that symbolized the Andean principle of duality and balance. complementary forces like day and night, mountain and valley, or human and divine. This interplay was not merely musical but philosophical, reflecting the Andean worldview where harmony arose from interconnected opposites. Flutes, crafted from materials such as bone, clay, or reed, were equally significant, their forms often mirroring the natural world with shapes resembling birds, snakes, or spirits. These instruments were not just tools for music, but sacred conduits, believed to bridge the earthly and spiritual realms. Some flutes were so small they could be worn as necklaces, while others were large, producing deep, resonant tones that carried across vast valleys. The Moche civilization, renowned for its intricate artistry, created whistling vessels, ceramic containers with internal chambers that, when filled with water, forced air through a whistle to produce eerie, otherworldly sounds. These vessels were not mere novelties. They were integral to rituals, blending the elements of water, air, and sound into a multi-sensory act of devotion, often used to invoke deities or mark sacred ceremonies. In Inca society, music was woven into every facet of life, from joyous birth celebrations to solemn funerals, from vibrant agricultural festivals to disciplined military parades. Flutes guided soldiers in choreographed marches, their melodies transforming warfare into a ritualized dance, while other instruments offered breath as a form of worship to gods like Inti, the sun, and Pachamama, the earth mother. Music was a dialogue with the divine, a way to call rain, bless harvests, or honor ancestors, its notes carrying the weight of spiritual intent. Despite the disruption caused by Spanish colonization, which sought to suppress indigenous traditions, the siku's ethereal tones and the haunting melodies of Andean flutes have endured. Today, in the highlands of Peru and Bolivia, these instruments are still played, their sounds echoing through markets, festivals, and remote villages. The music remains a living link to an ancient past, a timeless voice of stone, wind, and sky that continues to resonate in the thin mountain air, carrying the spirit of civilizations long gone, yet never fully silenced. In ancient India, music was not merely an art form, but a form of cosmic engineering, rooted in the profound belief that the universe itself was born from the primordial vibration of Om. This philosophical foundation gave rise to one of the most intricate and enduring musical traditions in human history, blending ritual, mathematics, and spiritual transformation into a seamless whole. The Vedas, sacred text dating back to at least 1500 BCE, contained Saman chants, hymns meant to be sung with precise melodies to align the human soul with divine forces. Brahmin priests, trained not only in philosophy and ritual but also in the art of voice modulation, mastered these cadences with meticulous care, as even a single mispronounced note could disrupt the sacred rite and upset the cosmic balance. The precision of their performances was a testament to the belief that music was a sacred act, a bridge to the divine that required both skill and reverence. Among the instruments of this tradition, the veena stood as a symbol of divine expression. A plucked string instrument with a resonating gourd, its delicate notes were believed to echo the vibrations of the cosmos, connecting the player to universal truths. Associated with Sarasvati, the goddess of wisdom, music, and the arts, the veena was more than a musical tool. It was a spiritual instrument, its strings resonating with the essence of creation itself. The bansuri, a bamboo flute, held similar reverence, tied to Lord Krishna, the god of love and divine play. Its haunting melodies were said to pierce the illusions of reality, Maya, transporting listeners to a higher state of consciousness where the boundaries of the self dissolved into the divine. Percussion instruments like the mridangam and tabla were equally vital, their complex rhythms, or talas, mirroring the heartbeats of life and the cyclical patterns of the cosmos. These mathematical rhythmic structures, some cyclical and others asymmetrical, were intricately tied to specific emotional states and times of day, reflecting the Indian concept of rasa, a theory that music should evoke distinct emotional flavors such as love, heroism, serenity, or sorrow. Ragas, melodic frameworks that guided Indian music, were designed to stir the soul and facilitate meditation, each one crafted to resonate with specific moods or seasons. This sophisticated system of music was not merely artistic but spiritual, a means of aligning the individual with the universal order. Unlike many ancient traditions that faded with time, India's musical heritage has evolved unbroken, its ancient principles still vibrant in modern performances. From classical concerts to devotional gatherings, the veena, bansuri and tabla continue to weave their magic, their notes carrying the same spiritual weight that once resonated in ancient temples and courts. The belief that music is a pathway to the divine remains at the heart of this tradition, a testament to its enduring power. In the ancient cities of Mesoamerica, from the towering pyramids of Teotihuacan to the ceremonial plazas of the Maya and Aztecs, music was inseparable from the sacred, a potent force that spoke to gods, sanctified blood offerings, summoned rain, and instilled fear in enemies. Drums dominated this vibrant soundscape, none more iconic than the huetl, a tall, single-headed drum carved from hollowed tree trunks. Covered with animal skins and adorned with sacred glyphs, its deep, resonant pulse echoed through stone courtyards during festivals, warfare, and sacrificial rites, sounding like the heartbeat of the gods themselves. The teponaztli, a slit drum played with rubber-tipped mallets, was another cornerstone of Mesoamerican music. Its carved surface featured two tongues that produced distinct pitches, allowing it to sing in the Nahuatl language, invoking the names of deities or the rhythms of fate. Flutes, crafted from bone, clay, or reed, were versatile, often shaped like animals or gods to reflect their spiritual significance. Some mimicked bird calls or jaguar growls, while the infamous Aztec death whistle, shaped like a skull, produced a blood-chilling shriek that struck terror during warfare or rituals, possibly opening portals to the spirit world. In the vibrant world of Mesoamerica, from the majestic pyramids of Teotihuacan to the ceremonial plazas of the Maya and Aztecs, music was far more than a passive backdrop. It was a dynamic, transformative force woven into the very fabric of existence. It played a central role in every significant event, marking the rhythm of life's milestones: births, coming-of-age rites, battles, agricultural cycles, and the solemn passage into death. Music was not merely an accompaniment, but a sacred act, imbued with spiritual power and cosmic significance. Instruments were often reserved for nobles and priests, their use governed by strict protocols, as playing them incorrectly was considered a grave spiritual offense that could disrupt the delicate balance between the mortal and divine realms. Drums, flutes, and conch shells formed the sonic backbone of sacrificial ceremonies, their resonant sounds guiding departed souls to the afterlife and fueling the cosmic order that sustained the universe. For the Aztecs, music was ritual technology, an indispensable component of the divine machinery that kept the world in motion. It did not soothe or pacify, it activated, transforming the mundane into the sacred and the mortal into the eternal. The huetl, a towering single-headed drum carved from hollowed tree trunks, was one of the most iconic instruments in Mesoamerica. Adorned with animal skins and intricate glyphs, its deep, pulsating rhythm echoed through stone courtyards, resonating like the heartbeat of the gods during festivals, warfare, and sacrificial rites. The teponaztli, a slit drum crafted from wood and played with rubber-tipped mallets, was equally vital, its carved tongues producing distinct pitches that could sing the names of deities or the rhythms of fate in the Nahuatl language. These drums were not mere instruments, but voices of the divine, their sounds carrying prayers and offerings to the heavens. Flutes, fashioned from bone, clay, or reed, were versatile and often intricately shaped to resemble animals or gods, reflecting their spiritual significance. Some flutes mimicked the calls of birds or the growls of jaguars, while others, like the infamous Aztec death whistle, produced a chilling, blood-curdling shriek. This haunting instrument, shaped like a skull, was likely used in warfare or rituals to strike terror into enemies or to open portals to the spirit world, its sound a visceral reminder of mortality and the divine. Conch shells, blown like trumpets, added a powerful, resonant layer to Mesoamerican music, their deep, haunting calls often signaling the start of sacred ceremonies or marking moments of cosmic transition. These instruments were not played casually. They were wielded by trained musicians, often priests or nobles, who understood their role in maintaining the harmony of the cosmos. Music accompanied every major ritual, from the celebration of a child's birth to the solemn rites of passage into adulthood, from the frenzied energy of battle to the cyclical rhythms of planting and harvest. In Aztec society, music was particularly integral to sacrificial ceremonies. where the pounding of drums, the wail of flutes, and the howl of conch shells created a sonic tapestry that guided the souls of the sacrificed to the gods, ensuring the sun would rise and the world would endure. This was not music for entertainment, it was a sacred act, a transformative force that activated the divine machinery of the universe, bridging the mortal and eternal realms in a profound dialogue with the gods. The musicians who wielded these instruments were revered figures, often trained from a young age in specialized schools where they mastered the intricate interplay of rhythm, melody, and ritual. Many were priests or nobles, their performances considered acts of devotion rather than mere artistry. Women, too, played significant roles, particularly as singers and dancers in temple rituals, their voices and movements integral to honoring deities like Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec god of war and the sun. The precision required in these performances was paramount. A misstep or incorrect note could be seen as an affront to the gods, potentially disrupting the cosmic balance. Music in Mesoamerica was not a luxury, but a necessity, a sacred technology that sustained the spiritual and physical world, ensuring the cycles of life, death, and rebirth continued unbroken. Though the great civilizations of antiquity, Mesoamerican, Mesopotamian, Greek, Chinese, Indian, African, and Andean, have long faded, their music endures as a vibrant thread in the rich tapestry of human culture. This enduring legacy is not confined to museum relics or academic studies. It lives in the rituals, designs, and collective memory of modern societies. Instruments like the Chinese qin, with its delicate whisper-like tones, the Indian veena, resonating with cosmic vibrations, and the African talking drums, speaking the language of ancestors, are still played today, their techniques passed down through generations. Each note carries centuries of meaning, connecting modern performers to the emperors, sages, priests, and warriors who once brought these instruments to life. The qin, played in quiet meditative settings, evokes the same sense of inner harmony sought by Confucian scholars thousands of years ago. The veena, strummed in Indian classical performances, continues to channel the divine essence of Saraswati, while the polyrhythmic pulse of African drums echoes the communal spirit of ancient rituals in modern festivals across the continent and its diaspora. The influence of ancient music extends far beyond the instruments themselves. The heptatonic scale, developed in Mesopotamia over 4,500 years ago, laid the foundational framework for modern Western harmony, its seven-note structure still underpinning much of today's music. Greek music theory, with its concepts of modes, intervals, and ethos, the belief that music could shape moral character, profoundly influenced early Christian chant, which in turn shaped the development of Western classical music. The lyre, with its delicate strings, evolved into the lute, which gave birth to the guitar, an instrument that now spans genres from flamenco to rock. The aulos, with its double reed design, inspired the oboe and bassoon, whose reedy timbres echo their ancient predecessor in orchestras worldwide. These connections are not merely technical, but cultural, linking the sounds of antiquity to the present in a continuous thread of human expression. Ancient music was never intended to be confined to performance halls or commercial charts. It was a multifaceted force that served as ritual, healing, and connection. It marked the milestones of human existence: birth, coming of age, marriage, harvest, war, and death, infusing each with meaning and purpose. In Mesopotamia, the lyre accompanied hymns that bridged the human and divine. In Greece, the aulos stirred emotions that ranged from ecstasy to sorrow. In China, the qin fostered spiritual refinement. In India, ragas evoked the soul's deepest emotions. In Africa, drums spoke the language of community and ancestry. In the Andes, flutes called to the gods of nature, and in Mesoamerica, music fueled the cosmic order. Across these diverse cultures, music was a universal language, capable of stirring emotions without words and forging community without physical boundaries. It was a sacred act, a means of communicating with the divine, healing the body and soul, and preserving the collective memory of a people. In today's digital age, where noise saturates our lives, streaming playlists, social media, and endless notifications, the sacred sounds of our ancestors offer a profound reminder of music's deeper purpose. Whether whispered through the delicate strings of a Chinese qin, thundered by the primal pulse of an African djembe, piped through the haunting breath of an Andean siku, or wailed by the eerie shriek of an Aztec death whistle. These sounds are more than mere music. They are memory, embodying the hopes, fears, and aspirations of ancient peoples. They are melody, a bridge between worlds, mortal and divine, past and present. They are a timeless echo of humanity's quest for meaning, a testament to the enduring power of sound to connect us across millennia. In the hustle of modern life, we need only pause and listen to hear the voices of our ancestors, still singing through the ages, inviting us to reconnect with the sacred and the eternal.